Welcome. We are opening the source material today on a deeply tragic event that occurred in Knoxville, Tennessee.
The case that sadly moved well beyond just local news to become this internationally recognized example of the ultimate danger in escalating teen dating
It
violence.
really did. And the materials we've reviewed, they tell a very clear chronological story. It starts with a high school relationship that, turned possessive and controlling, and it concludes with just irreversible violence.
Yeah.
Our focus today is on the 2016 murder of 16-year-old Emma Walker. Emma was a vibrant high school junior, very well known in her community, and her life, which was so full of promise, was violently ended in November 2016.
By her ex-boyfriend, William Riley Gall.
That's right. It's just a devastating story, and it really compels us to examine not just the crime itself, but the psychological patterns that led up to it.
Exactly. Our mission in exploring these specific sources is to really move past the sensationalism you sometimes see. We're going to be meticulously examining the factual timeline,
Starting with what?
starting with the subtle red flags of possessive behavior, then analyzing these specific, really deceitful tactics Gall used to maintain control, and then we'll dissect the remarkable steps of the criminal investigation.
And this exploration is just vital because it offers critical context for recognizing those often missed indicators of, toxic teen dating dynamics.
hmm
And the core facts of the case, I mean, they're just stark. They're brutal. Emma Walker was killed in her own home in the Sturchy Hills neighborhood of Knoxville on November 21st, 2016.
And the sources confirm she was shot while she was asleep in her bed?
Asleep in her bed, the wound was caused by a single gunshot to the side of her head. I mean, it was a cold, calculated act.
An execution.
Yeah.
And that coldness, combined with the age of everyone involved is why this case resonated so widely. The sheer tragedy and the context of domestic violence in a teenage setting just ensured it captured massive media attention.
National and international.
Absolutely. When a case gets profiled extensively on shows like 2020 and Dateline, it really underscores its significance as a case study.
So we have to treat this material with the seriousness it deserves, recognizing that we are analyzing a life cut far too short due to a complete breakdown in respect and safety within a relationship.
That's right.
To properly contextualize this story, we really have to look at the backgrounds of the two young people involved.
That's essential.
Let's start with Emma Jane Walker. She was born on March 20th, 2000, the daughter of Jill and Mark Walker. Her mother was an elementary school teacher, and Emma had a younger brother.
So a strong, supportive family environment.
It seems so, yes. And Emma was deeply engaged in her high school life at Central High. She started in the fall of 2014. And she quickly stood out, not just as a dedicated student,
She was an honor student.
an honor student, exactly, but also as a really active participant in extracurricular life. She was on the cheerleading squad, which, as you know, that involves a huge degree of commitment and teamwork.
And beyond just the athletics, her academic and career interests, they really pointed toward a future that was focused on service.
How so?
Well, the sources detail her involvement in organizations like HOSA, which stands for Health Occupation Students of America. And for listeners who might not be familiar with the U.S. school system, HOSA is a student organization specifically for those interested in health professions.
Okay.
She was also a member of the National Beta Club, which is a key academic honor society. It recognizes achievement, character, and leadership. And on top of all that, she participated in Young Life, which is a Christian youth group.
So it's clear from these details that Emma was, she was highly motivated, very successful in multiple parts of her life.
Absolutely. And at just 16, her future goal was ambitious and incredibly compassionate. She planned to study neonatal nursing in college.
Wow.
And her mother's description of her is so simple, but it's powerful. She called her a compassionate and kind girl. Understanding this provides the crucial context for the enormous potential that was lost here.
Now let's turn to William Riley Gall, who, as we mentioned, preferred to be called Riley. He was a bit older, born around 1998, and he was primarily raised by his mother and his grandparents.
And like Emma, he came from Central High School. He'd graduated the year before the murder.
Riley Gall was also considered a top student, and he was a dedicated athlete. He played wide receiver on the football team, which, that often brings a certain level of notoriety and status within a high school.
It does, but what really stands out in the sources is the nuance provided by his friends.
Yeah.
They described him as a little on the nerdy side.
A jokester, too.
Yeah, and a jokester, suggesting he didn't perfectly fit that classic jock stereotype.
And that detail is actually quite important because when we discuss teen dating violence, there's often this assumption of a specific, an overly aggressive personality type.
Right. that exact stereotype.
But here the sources suggest a more complex, maybe socially insecure young man who was still, highly successful academically and athletically.
Exactly. It just highlights that controlling abusive behavior is rooted in a desire for power and entitlement, and it can manifest in individuals who otherwise appear charming or intelligent or even reserved.
And at the time of the murder, Riley was an 18-year-old former freshman attending Maryville College, a local liberal arts school.
And he was continuing his football career there, a Division III player. And that physical separation, the transition into college life, that likely played a role in the increasing volatility of his relationship with Emma.
How so?
Well, proximity and control were suddenly challenged. He wasn't seeing her every day at school anymore.
The relationship began in the fall of 2014. Emma was only 14, a freshman, while Riley was 16 and a junior.
And even the very beginning of their relationship, according to the sources, it held an immediate red flag that Emma, seemingly overlooked.
That initial broken promise it's incredibly revealing. Gall promised Emma he would break up with his current girlfriend to date her. He even promised to take her to prom.
And he failed on both counts. He went to the prom with the other girl instead.
And the fact that Emma, who was just 14, let it go, it just suggests a pattern of acceptance of poor treatment right from the start.
It's a common setup for future abuse dynamics. Abusers will often test boundaries early on just to see what they can get away with.
And when they did officially become a couple after that, things appeared fine for a while.
On the surface.
On the surface, yeah. The sources state that initially Gall was attentive and kind, and the relationship seemed perfect to outsiders. But this is the classic mask. It's what makes identifying the true nature of these relationships so difficult for friends and family.
That's the nature of the control cycle. The initial charm and intensity, sometimes called love bombing, it's used to establish a deep connection and also isolation. And those sources indicate that it quickly transitioned into possessiveness.
Friends and relatives noticed this shift.
They did. Gall began exhibiting deeply toxic behavior, particularly not wanting Emma to spend time with anyone other than him, or, engaging in activities that he didn't approve of.
This isn't just simple jealousy.
No, not at all. This is a calculated attempt to isolate the victim and to cut off their support network.
And can we zoom in on that isolation tactic? I mean, in a high school environment, being cut off from your friends is particularly damaging. Your social life is everything.
Absolutely. Isolation is a cornerstone of domestic violence because a victim who has no outside support is less likely to leave. And when they do try to leave, they have nowhere to turn. Gall's disapproval of her friends or her activities, it wasn't about protecting her. It was about ensuring his control was total.
And we see this possessiveness just feed the volatility, turning the relationship on and off for 2 years.
And Emma's parents, thankfully, they recognized the seriousness of this pattern and became actively involved.
Yes, the parental intervention in October 2016 was a huge step. They recognized the relationship was toxic. They intervened by grounding Emma and explicitly prohibiting her from having any contact with Gall.
And this decision, while it was protective, seems to have been the catalyst that just pushed Gall's need for control into overdrive.
It seems like it was.
It was. When external forces like parents interrupt that control cycle, the abuser often escalates their tactics dramatically. And the ultimate break came in November 2016 when Emma attempted to end the relationship for good.
And Gall refused to accept it.
He refused to accept this loss of control. The sources reveal he immediately resorted to extreme emotional manipulation.
Specifically, threatening to commit suicide if she followed through with the breakup.
Exactly.
And that tactic is incredibly damaging, especially to a young person. It shifts the entire burden of the abuser's well-being onto the victim. It makes the breakup feel like a life or death choice for him, and it just erases the victim's right to self-preservation.
Is the ultimate tool of coercion. But the sources show that even after the relationship was supposedly over, Gall's obsession didn't just go away. It morphed into active, deceitful stalking.
He continued contacting her, often anonymously, using these increasingly elaborate ploys meant to evoke either sympathy or, later on, fear.
And the deceitful ploys, they truly underscore the extent of his psychological instability and manipulation. The most famous example, of course, is the fake kidnapping story.
That's right. Gall lied about being kidnapped. He created this whole elaborate narrative of being in danger.
All to try and make Emma feel so sorry for him, and presumably so responsible for his safety, that she would just rush back to him. The goal wasn't affection, the goal was control and proximity.
And when this ploy failed, he became desperate.
And we see the shift from manipulation to outright terror just days before the murder. On November 18, 2016, Gall allegedly sent an anonymous message to Emma, instructing her to leave her house to find him unconscious on the street,
This was a clear attempt to lure her outside.
likely under the pretense of being her rescuer or just to force a confrontation. But what's crucial here is Emma's reaction. Her friends confirmed she was angry and frightened, and crucially, she did not believe him.
This marks the moment where his manipulation tactics failed completely. He had lost control.
And Emma had mentally severed the relationship. For someone who based his identity on controlling her, this failure demanded an immediate, violent escalation.
And the escalation came 2 nights before her murder. A man dressed entirely in black actively tried to scare her near her home.
And the sources, they revealed the chilling text Emma sent to her friends shortly before her death.
What did it say?
She described the man and stated explicitly that she was scared and thought she was going to die. This is not just some vague fear. This is specific, contextualized terror linking directly back to the possessive actions of her ex-boyfriend. She knew she was in danger.
It's just devastating that she had that premonition.
It is. And that text message, it became a linchpin of the prosecution's case because it established her state of mind and the clear climate of fear and threat created by Gall. It demonstrates that his actions were premeditated and intended to cause serious harm or death.
So the progression from those emotional ploys to physical threats, it all culminated in the act of murder. And the planning, it began on November 18th, 2016.
The same day as that bizarre anonymous message plot.
That's right. And the source material confirms that Gall stole a 9mm Glock handgun from under the seat of his grandfather's vehicle.
The theft of that weapon is a critical piece of evidence regarding premeditation. The sources even note that Gall's grandfather suspected that Riley had taken the weapon to harm himself.
Because of his history of threatening suicide to manipulate Emma.
Right. This confirms that even his immediate family recognized his severe emotional volatility, though they gravely misidentified the likely target of his violence.
The timeline of the attack on November 21st, 2016, it shows meticulous planning. Around 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Gall drove from his Maryville College dorm room specifically to Emma Walker's house in Sturchy Hills.
This required a deliberate decision to leave campus and travel all the way to her neighborhood.
And that journey, it was not impulsive. We know he was already thinking about covering his tracks.
The sources state that before he even headed to the house, he made a phone call to a friend,
Asking a highly incriminating question.
how to remove fingerprints from a gun. That phone call established his criminal intent and his awareness of the consequences of his actions long before any shots were fired.
The shooting itself happened quickly, which confirms the planning and the intent to kill. Gall fired 2 shots from 2 different locations outside the home.
And that detail is crucial because it shows he moved to ensure accuracy or to fire a secondary shot if the first one missed the target. He was aiming directly into the area where Emma was sleeping.
And the aiming was precise and deadly. 1 bullet struck the side of her head right behind her left ear, resulting in instantaneous death.
The other bullet lodged in her pillow. The evidence that he aimed specifically at her head while she was in bed, it just strongly contradicts any later defense argument that this was simply a desperate ploy gone wrong or an attempt to fire a warning shot.
You know, he executed her in her sleep.
Mm-hmm.
We know from the investigation that Gall's post-crime movements were tracked. His roommate later confirmed that Gall returned to his dorm room around 4:45 a.m.
Having been out all night.
All night. This provided a 4-hour window during which he committed the murder and began the process of hiding the evidence.
And the crime was discovered around 6 a.m. when Emma's mother, Jill Walker, went into her room to wake her up. That moment of discovery, finding her daughter not breathing, led to a frantic 911 call.
And initially, the responding sheriff's deputies were dispatched under the premise of a possible suicide.
Which is somewhat understandable, given that a high school student had died from a gunshot wound in her home.
But the scene itself, it quickly refuted that initial assumption. The lead forensic technician and lead detective Alan Merritt arrived and rapidly assessed the situation.
Key observations, like a visible bullet hole in the bedroom wall and another hole about shoulder height, they indicated the trajectory came from the outside.
Not from Emma herself.
Exactly. Furthermore, they located 2 shell casings outside the house, which confirmed the weapon had been fired from a distance, through the wall or window. This evidence immediately secured the location as a homicide crime scene.
The entire focus of the investigation was immediately clear.
This was an intentional killing carried out by someone outside the home. The immediate task then became identifying who had a motive and access.
With the scene secured, the KCSO Major Crimes Division began its intensive investigation. They started questioning Emma's family and friends.
And due to the relationship's known history of volatility and that dramatic breakup, Riley Gull's name came up frequently.
He was a person of interest.
Oh, almost immediately. Investigators had the details of the toxic relationship, the stalking, the threats, but they needed physical evidence to move from suspicion to probable cause.
And the critical break came very quickly, from Gall's own circle of friends.
Alex McCarty, a close friend of Gall's, provided the crucial piece of information to Detective Merritt. He confirmed that Gall had stolen a 9mm Glock from his grandfather just the weekend Emma died.
This wasn't just hearsay, it was an eyewitness account of the weapon's presence.
Exactly. And when detectives brought Gall in for questioning and confronted him with this, he just outright lied.
He denied having the gun.
Denied having it. Denied ever showing it to his friend. And this denial, it only increased the investigators' suspicion.
And at the same time, authorities confirmed through ballistics that the bullets recovered from the scene were indeed from a 9mm Glock.
Perfectly matching the description of the weapon Gall was known to have stolen.
So as the police closed in, Gall's panic became evident. He attempted to manage the escalating situation by reaching out to his friends.
He specifically messaged them and explicitly asked them to stop speaking to detectives. This act, which is bordering on witness tampering, was a massive red flag for them.
This brings us to the most defining and I think ethically complex part of the investigation. The moral courage of Gall's friends, Alex McCarty and Noah Walton.
It's an incredible part of the story. They realized the severity of Gall's lies and the potential seriousness of his involvement, and they made a profound decision, moving beyond friendship loyalty to cooperate actively with the authorities.
And this collaboration became absolutely vital to recovering the murder weapon and securing the physical evidence necessary for a conviction.
That decision must have been incredibly difficult for two teenagers. I mean, they risked their own safety and friendship by turning on someone they knew.
The risk was enormous, but the sources confirmed their conviction that Gall was lying was stronger than their loyalty.
So the detectives, they recognized the importance of these witnesses and set up a precise undercover operation. McCarty and Walton were equipped with microphones, a transmitter, and a hidden video camera.
This meant everything they said and everything Gall said would be admissible evidence.
They set a trap. Noah Walton invited Gall to his house under the believable, everyday pretext of playing a video game, and the recording started immediately.
And this recorded interaction was pivotal.
It was. While being recorded, Gall continued his denial of the killing. But more importantly, he actively tried to coach his friends on how to obstruct justice.
How?
He suggested they should lie to the detectives and claim they were all under the influence of alcohol during the weekend in question. The implication being that any statements they had made about the gun or his whereabouts could be dismissed as unreliable.
It demonstrates a clear, continuing pattern of deceit, an attempt to evade responsibility.
And then the conversation shifted directly to the evidence itself. Gall, perhaps feeling relief or, trust in his friends, proposed that they go to the Bluffs, a local wooded area near a river where he planned to finally dispose of the remaining evidence.
But before heading to the river, they made a stop at Gall's stepfather's house.
And this is where Gall had concealed the 9mm Glock. The detail about where the gun was hidden is fascinating. It wasn't just stuffed in a closet. Gall had placed the weapon inside a trash bag.
A trash bag containing a host of other incriminating items.
Exactly. The sources list gloves, multiple trash bags, black tape, tennis shoes, and black clothing.
The black clothing was particularly significant.
It was. Investigators believed it to be what Gall wore during the shooting and, more chillingly, what Emma had described seeing the man wearing who was trying to scare her just 2 nights before her death.
Cool. This linked the premeditation stalking attempts directly to the murder weapon and the perpetrator.
The moment of truth must have been terrifying for McCarty and Walton. When Gall revealed the weapon, McCarty's reaction was captured on the audio.
Oh my God, that is a real gun.
That moment solidified the evidence. It did. Immediately after the gun was revealed and secured on camera and audio, Walton, who was in contact with the monitoring authorities, notified them.
And Gall was arrested 1 minute later.
The investigation achieved its goal. The physical evidence, the murder weapon, the clothing, the recorded attempts to tamper with the investigation, it was all secured. all thanks to the difficult, courageous decision made by his former friends. This testimony and evidence were the backbone of the entire prosecution.
Following his arrest and indictment, Riley Gall was facing a massive legal battle. He was indicted on 7 separate charges related to the killing of Emma Walker.
It reflects the multifaceted nature of his actions.
Right. They included first-degree murder, felony murder, tampering with evidence, stalking, reckless endangerment, possessing a firearm during a dangerous felony, and theft between $500 and $1,000.
It's important for you to understand why the prosecution piled on those different murder charges. First-degree murder means the state has to prove premeditation, that Gall planned the act of killing.
And the evidence of stealing the gun, asking about fingerprints, the precise aiming, that all supported this.
Exactly. But they also charged him with felony murder.
And what does that mean in this context?
Felony murder is the charge that applies when a death occurs while the defendant is committing another dangerous felony. In this case, the underlying felonies were possessing a firearm during a dangerous felony and the theft of the gun.
So it's a kind of backup.
Exactly. The prosecution uses felony murder as a backup. If the jury couldn't agree on premeditation, they could still find him guilty if they agreed he killed Emma while committing those other serious crimes. It ensures they cover all bases regarding the unlawful death.
Despite the gravity of the charges, Gall's family was able to post his $1 million bail,
Which allowed him to remain free pending trial.
and that trial was initially scheduled for October 2017. However, it was postponed by Judge Bobby R. McGee until April 2018 to allow his defense attorney, Wesley Stone, more time for preparation.
And the trial, held in the Knox County Criminal Court, it began on April 30, 2018. It was deeply emotional and relied heavily on the chronological evidence we've just been discussing.
Emma's mother, Jill Walker, provided just heartbreaking testimony about the moment she found her daughter. It set a powerful, human tone for the case.
We also heard testimony from the 911 operator, neighbors, and the responding investigators who detailed the crime scene and the immediate realization that this was not a suicide.
But the friends' testimony, specifically McCarty and Walton, that was arguably the most critical.
Oh, absolutely. 5 of Emma's friends took the stand, recounting the period of intense manipulation. They detailed the entire fake kidnapping plot and, crucially, repeated the chilling text message Emma sent just before her death.
The one stating she was scared and thought she was going to die.
This testimony legally established Gall's pattern of escalating threats and Emma's deep, justified fear, which speaks directly to the malice involved.
Even Gall's own relatives had to testify, which must have been just a painful exercise.
His grandfather confirmed the theft of the 9mm Glock, and his stepfather testified, likely concerning the recovery of the weapon and the hidden evidence in his basement.
And while that oral testimony set the scene, the physical evidence provided the irrefutable truth.
The audio recording of Jill Walker's frantic 911 call was played for the jury, creating an emotionally overwhelming impact. But the most damning evidence were the videos recorded by McCarty and Walton,
They literally showed Gall attempting to dispose of the physical evidence.
tying his actions immediately after the murder to the cover-up. The jury didn't have to speculate about his guilt. They saw him actively trying to conceal it.
Let's discuss the defense strategy, led by attorney Wesley Stone. It was a fascinating, though ultimately unsuccessful, attempt to negotiate intent.
It really was.
Stone did not deny that Gall shot Walker. Instead, the defense argued that Gall was attempting a bizarre, desperate series of theatrical ploys to win her back.
That's the core of their argument. They suggested Gall's intent was not murder, but to pose as her rescuer. The theory was that Gall intended to scare her, maybe even injure himself, to make her realize she needed him.
And in this twisted scenario, the gun going off and killing her was framed as a catastrophic accident.
Yeah, exactly. An accident resulting from an irrational but non-homicidal plan.
But how did the defense reconcile the need to pose as a rescuer with stealing a gun days earlier, traveling to her home in the middle of the night, and asking a friend how to remove fingerprints?
And that's where the defense utterly failed, and where the prosecution, led by Kevin Allen and Molly Martin, excelled.
They countered that Gall planned to kill Walker because she had definitively rejected him and threatened his control.
They argued that the totality of his actions, the theft, the travel, the fingerprint question, and the precise aim into her sleeping area demonstrated clear and undeniable premeditation.
The jury agreed. On May 8, 2018, they found William Riley Gall guilty of all charges.
And despite the initial charge list, there were some minor legal modifications, which are common. Stalking with bodily injury and a deadly weapon was reduced to the lesser included offense of stalking, and the firearm charge was slightly modified.
But the core, most serious convictions, first-degree murder and felony murder, stood firm.
Judge McGee moved quickly after the verdict. He immediately sentenced Gall to life imprisonment.
In Tennessee, a life sentence for murder often includes the possibility of parole.
It does. However, because of the severity of the crimes and the convictions, the judge stipulated a mandatory minimum of 51 years before Gall would even be eligible for parole consideration.
This type of sentencing ensures that, given his age at conviction, Gall will spend the vast majority, if not all, of his life in prison.
It reflects the extreme gravity of his premeditated crime.
Predictably, Gall has pursued every legal means to challenge the verdict. In 2021, he requested a new trial based on claims of insufficient evidence,
Which was swiftly denied. He then appealed to the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals.
and the latest recorded ruling came in February of 2023. The appellate judge ruled to uphold his primary murder conviction and the resulting life sentence, modifying only the felony theft conviction.
Thus, the conviction remains robust, a testament to the strong evidence presented by the prosecution and the moral action taken by his friends.
When analyzing a case that focuses so heavily on the details of the crime and the legal proceedings, it is absolutely essential that we spend time reflecting on the person whose life was lost.
And how her community chose to honor her memory. Emma Jane Walker's life, her character, her aspirations, that's what we must ensure endure.
Her involvement in high school was extensive, and her community honored that. Because of her dedication to health careers, both the Health Occupation Students of America, HOSA, and the cheerleading squad at Central High School established the Emma Walker Memorial Scholarship.
This provides tangible, ongoing support for students who share her academic drive and commitment.
And her specific career goal to study neonatal nursing was memorialized in a profoundly moving way.
The East Tennessee Children's Hospital's Neonatal Intensive Care Unit dedicated a room in Walker's honor. It's a lasting, beautiful tribute that connects her memory to the future life and care she had hoped to provide.
The community also dedicated a public space to her memory. In Knox County, they opened the Emma Jane Walker Memorial Dog Park.
These memorials, they transform her name from being solely associated with tragedy to being linked with community, with compassion, and with the life she lived, rather than the violence that ended it.
The tragedy of this entire case is the clear, devastating trajectory we've analyzed. The relationship's decline from a typical high school romance to a fatal act of extreme possessive violence.
The sources provide a meticulous timeline of Gall's escalation, moving from emotional manipulation threatening suicide, faking a kidnapping, to persistent, deceitful stalking ploys, and ultimately murder.
And this chronology is a powerful demonstration of how aggressive, controlling behavior, when it's not checked, spirals into profound danger.
The knowledge gleaned from this analysis hinges on recognizing patterns. Gall's actions, the need for total control, the emotional blackmail, the isolation attempts, are all classic red flags of potential violence.
When he lost control, he reverted to violence as the ultimate means of maintaining power, even in her death.
And what we must emphasize is that the success of the investigation, the ability to secure the conviction, hinged directly on the ethical choices of two young people. The critical thinking and moral courage of Gall's friends, Alex McCarty and Noah Walton, were the linchpins.
They moved past the instinctual loyalty of friendship.
They did. They recognized the gravity of his actions and actively chose to collaborate with the authorities. Their decision to secure the physical evidence, the weapon, and the clothing was instrumental in achieving justice.
This detailed analysis of the sources shows us how frighteningly quickly emotional manipulation and control can escalate into physical, fatal violence once the abuser feels rejection.
Considering the exhaustive theatrical lengths Gall went to, the fake kidnapping, the anonymous threats, the carefully concealed evidence, what does this detailed account tell you about the psychological profile of entitlement and control that inevitably leads to domestic violence? It forces us to confront the fact that these patterns are recognizable and often observable long before they become fatal. That is a crucial consideration for anyone reflecting on this tragic case.
We appreciate you taking the time to explore this difficult and necessary subject with us. We remain committed to thoroughly and impartially exploring the facts contained in the source material for you.
Thanks for listening.